Senate Bill 1569, but we have an amendment in the nature of a substitute or just an amendment. I think Mr. Sharp has that prepared for the committee.
Mr. Chairman, line amendment, page 2, this is Senate Bill 1569, page 2, line 61. After the word systems, comma, insert making due allowances for commercial use of water and sewer systems, comma.
What line was that?
62.
16. Line 62.
62, yes, sir. Mr. Chair.
Jeff, would you repeat the amendment, please?
Okay, it's going to be, actually, it's going to be, the amendment's going to be at the very end of line 61, in front of line 62, after the word systems, comma, insert making due allowances for commercial use of water and sewer systems, comma.
And it's been moved and seconded that we adopt the amendment. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Amendments 4A, citizens read.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What this bill does, very simply, is redefine and put into a quantitative measure what was originally listed on line 59 was fair and reasonable. Well, that was really up to interpretation of what people decided what was fair and reasonable. And on lines 23, you'll notice in there it says such fees and charges shall be practical and equitable as payable. Those two terms, as you all know, typically have a different meaning than fair and reasonable. And quite frankly, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, we've had some abuses, and we'd like to define quantitatively what practical and equitable is, and that's what lines 60 through 68 do with this. I have some data that shows where some jurisdictions maybe they define fair and reasonable a whole lot different than others. And we've worked really hard with all the players in this. The amendment came as a result of our major manufacturers and some of those folks as far as some of the commercial uses of that. But what we're really trying to get at is just trying to have a standardized measure that all people, regardless of who you are or who you know or anything else, are under the same equation when we're calculating these things. And the other thing we did on this bill, members, if you go all the way to the last page, the provisions of this act shall become effective January 1st, 2018. That's to allow localities the time to implement this and make the necessary changes they need to make. We don't want to put any undue burdens or unfunded mandates or anything. So, Mr. Chairman, that's the bill. There is no financial impact to it, but this is a good government bill that allows folks who are in the building industry the opportunity to have a level playing field.
Any questions? Concerns? Anybody?
Question.
Okay, question. Yeah, Doug Marshall. Yeah.
Yes, Senator, usually bills like this come with a story. So what's the story? What's the background?
Well, Mr. Chairman, Delegate Marshall, we had a contractor who was, and I'm not going to name the locality, literally a year before had built an apartment complex. They were held to one standard on that. They used those estimations to do this next complex. As you can understand, they have money outlay and everything else based on that. When they went to go do the new tap water fees, it wasn't the same, and they couldn't explain it. They arbitrarily came up with what was fair and reasonable. It was almost triple. I think the first apartment complex was 1.5, and this new one, less than a year and a half later, was almost $3.5 million. So that's how this came about, Delegate, and we started to look into it, and we tried to find out what localities have what. I have that information. I'd rather not pull it out. If you don't want to know what your counties and cities are charging for tap fees compared to the rest of the state, I'd certainly share that with you. I'm not trying to beat up on different localities or local governments that do that stuff. I'm just trying to make it fair across the board.
Anyone wish to speak in favor of the bill?
Mr. Chair.
Okay, yes, Doug Marshall.
Senator, use your microphone.
Mike.
What would this do to localities in Northern Virginia, in the 8th planning district?
They might be in line with that. They might actually have a lower rate, when they go to recalculate that. Some jurisdictions could have a slightly higher rate, but, are you thinking for Prince William County?
Yes.
Okay, your tap fees are $4,600 a house. That's a little bit on the higher end, based on the Prince William County Water Authority, but, it's not way out of whack, like I've got some that are 14,000.
And what, Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
what would it be, thank you, what would it be if we adopt your bill in Prince William? From 46, would it roughly remain the same, or would it drop, or?
I haven't calculated, based on, if you look at the formula that we got from the engineers on how they would figure out that, it takes into effect quite a few variables there, but they're all, being able to be based on true numbers. So they've computed on the estimated consumption of water on or in the real estate, so they can tell that if you have so many fixtures in a house and a single family home and all that sort of stuff, the number and kind of water outlets. So it's gonna be based on true data on what those things are. If you have a 3-gallon toilet, it does so many flushes. So I couldn't tell you without recalculating all that for each one of those, but the folks that set your rates certainly can.
So, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
So what you're trying to achieve is a uniformity based on actual cost?
That's exactly right, Devin. It's a great way to put it.
Delegate Collins, Chris?
Thank you. Senator, I sit on my water services board back home, and we just raised our connection fees for multifamily units. And I'm wondering if we are setting, so what your bill would do is say, you're setting those based upon fair and reasonable, and are we supposed to be using, we use our other localities to try to compare to those localities, see how they do that, but we also base it upon how many bedrooms, how many bathrooms,
How many fixtures?
and how many fixtures.
Exactly.
Okay, so my locality can still do that, it just has to be uniform across the board. We can't choose one place that who's gonna build 200 units, and the other place builds 100 units, we can't
Correct.
change the
You
rate.
got to base it on how many fixtures, all that sort of stuff.
Thank you, sir.
Delegate Marshall, Danny?
Yeah, a further question. So look up Danville and see what we are. And so while you're doing that, I assume that what we're basing this on is a single family home, was it a 3/4 inch water tap? And so if you have a multifamily, then it's gonna go 1.5. And so like Prince William, the $4,600, is that a 3/4 inch pipe? Or is that larger, or does it make any difference?
I don't think it makes a difference. It's all about flow and how much they use, right? How much they get in there, I believe. I don't show Danville in here. Let me see. What's the nearest county to Danville? I should know that.
It's Spain.
Oh.
But the question is it based on the size of the pipe?
No, it's based on the fixtures and all the other quantitative stuff, actual use of those items, like the toilet, how many gallons per flush, all those sort of things. And then I think there's a average of what a family uses and that sort of stuff. Pennsylvania County's $955.
Thank you.
Delegate Crowder?
Mr. Chairman, quick question, Senator, would any citizens see a big jump in their water bill come January?
I don't know that we'd see a huge change in some of those. If there was, then that would certainly tell us that some jurisdictions were not being, quote, under the code before it changed it fair and reasonable. So I think we would work that out, and that's one of the reasons why we put the enactment clause to 2018. So if there were some of these folks that were 14,000, there's a reason why it's so high, going across the state, and their neighbors isn't that high at all, so probably, potentially.
Delegate Campbell?
Senator Reeves, could you tell me what the tap fee for Smith County is?
$535.
And could you tell me what the tap fee for the neighboring Washington County is?
$920. So not too bad.
But almost double from one county to the next.
Close, not quite.
Next would be Marshall, Marshall.
Senator, why would it affect the rates of water after the hookup? Because I thought you were just talking about the hookup, not the cost of the gallon of water later.
Well, we are, but when they build a residential community, they have to take all those into effect. How much they're gonna flow, all that sort of stuff, the construction cost to do it. It's really kind of a way that, we think that Lookout are padding their budget, through these things by just, quite frankly, jacking up fees on fair and reasonable and defining it how they wanna define it. So they'll pad their budgets based on it. I mean, that's the truth, that's why I'm bringing the bill. I mean, it's just not, depends on who you know, who's on the board, all that sort of stuff, and it's kind of arbitrary.
Solid.
And perhaps as a question for Mr. Tolson, my understanding is this is tap fees, so anybody who's currently getting water, it will not impact their fees at all. The only people it will impact is new taps going in, is that correct?
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. I'm Mike Olson with the Home Builders Association of Virginia. I'm just speaking because this is one of the areas of significant frustration to our industry. Fair and reasonable seems to be whatever 4 or 5 people in the back of the boardroom decide it wants to be. There are some localities that do it very professional and very in a very transparent way. For example, I give Chesterfield is a good idea of a locality that brings the industry in, sits down, lays all the numbers out on the books and shows them what their future plans are for the expansion of their system and what their costs are. And then based on that, from time to time, they'll make modest adjustments. But in other cases, it's all by people in the back of a room who make a decision that they want to raise these fees, and there's no current basis for it. These are connection fees. These are when you buy your new house, you have to tap into the existing water system and the existing sewer system. And I might add that typically your water fees and your tap fees are the same. So that $4,600 in Prince William County would be for your water, and then there'd be $4,600 for your sewer as well, so you double it. But they can range as high as $10,000 to $15,000 or even more in some localities per service. When we saw this bill and saw this change from fair and reasonable to practical and equitable, we asked questions about it too. But the more we investigated, the more we learned that actually for the rates, they're determined based on this formula that's consistent across all localities in the Commonwealth. So when we looked down and looked at the change to practical and equitable for the tap fees, and then see that it's defined in the very same way that the water and sewer charges are equated, we thought, well, that makes sense. That's a methodology. That's something that gives an equation so that you would know whether or not perhaps it's fair and reasonable. Because today, fair and reasonable typically is what your adjoining localities are doing. Something in that ballpark. There's no definition of it. There's been litigation about it. So you can turn to that for examples. But typically, it's one of the most frustrating areas of our industry that we have. Is one day that water and sewer connection fees are this number, and then 6 months later, they might be another number that you budgeted for something different. So we just add our support for the bill, and I'd be happy to answer your questions.
Don't go anywhere yet. Doug Collins, did you have a question?
I did. Being the lone no vote in that back room of 5 individuals to increase the connection fees, since I'll use my locality, Frederick County, and we utilize Loudoun County as, even though Clark County is in between. Do you think under this bill, do you think what we did would have passed muster under this bill? And I'm using that as an example because we just did that a few months ago.
I know that it was very contentious within the community. The entire business community across Frederick County, including our industry, opposed a significant increase in their tap fees. They got in the back room, they came up with a number, the industry stepped up based on the notices they received, the journal notices, opposed it, thought it was too high, exorbitant approved, and now we pay the higher fees. There was no justification for it.
Anyone else that wishes to speak in favor of the bill?
Mr. Chairman, Brett Massey, President and CEO of the Virginia Manufacturers Association. We want to thank the patron. We'll add our comments with home builders and the additional language dealing with the commercial use. We particularly support that. Industrial businesses, particularly those that are water intensive, tap fees can actually be a disincentive to growth where you're at. We've actually had a business that couldn't grow where they were at because the tap fees were set so high as a disincentive to grow, so they moved. So there are good reasons to have good calculations. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, this bill was not heard in subcommittee. That's why it's being held here in the full committee. Everybody knows what we're doing. Any further questions or discussion? Anyone in the audience wishes to speak against the bill? Yes, sir.
Morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Chris Pomeroy, and I represent the Association of Municipal Wastewater Agencies, and was asked to speak to the measure from a rate-making and practice and policy standpoint and share a little bit of that expertise with you this morning. One of the key issues being, quite candidly, we don't know what the implications of the bill would be for rate-making practices in Virginia. For starters, Title 15.2 uses the current standard of fair and reasonable as applied to connection fees in 6 separate provisions. 2 overlapping provisions that apply to localities. The bill touches one of those 2. 2 similar provisions that apply to water and sewer authorities. The bill does not touch those. And then 2 provisions relative to sanitary districts, which are less common in Virginia today than they once were. But the point is, the bill amends one of 6 places where the current fair and reasonable standard is stated for connection fees. So the bill would create some disparity there. We don't know what the implications of that would be. The second point, and I've listened carefully to the comments, just trying to offer some perspective and try to explain what I can from the industry briefing here today. Variation in connection fees. One of the primary reasons for that is that in some communities, the connection fee is limited to the cost of the labor to make the tap. In other communities, it's the fee that's charged to cover both the physical connection at the time of construction and also the extension of mains, the system development. Across the water industry in Virginia and nationally, these terms are used in different ways in different places, and that accounts for some of the inconsistency in what we see labeled as connection fees in industry type reports. As systems develop, of course, there are costs of the utilities development, and it's a question of where in the rate structure those actual costs are captured. That explains some of the disparity I think we see. Item 3, our association did not endorse any type of use of connection fees for padding general government budgets. Generally, I think the good practice across the state is that these are managed as enterprise funds and segregated. If there's an exception, that's a different situation, I would submit. Should not be standard industry practice. There's a question of some of the examples that were given. There are certainly, I agree, there are examples like this around the state of lower fees and higher fees.
Excuse me 1 second. We only have a certain amount of time, and Senator Waxman, you can leave. Yours is fine. Peterson, yours is fine. They're going to say, this is the one that was a little bit controversial. Your bills are okay. You
Am I allowed to watch?
If you like torture, there's no sense in you sitting there for no reason.
All right.
Okay?
I was just here because she was here, that's all.
Okay. Now, you can proceed. Go ahead.
Thank you, sir. I will attempt to wrap this up very quickly here. Why are some fees very low relative to what are generally expensive utility costs? Sometimes that's a local legislative decision as a matter of policy to subsidize growth. That accounts for low fees in some communities. different system projects and different utilities. So my point, Mr. Chairman and members, is that there are reasons for variation, system by system, project by project. I was trying to wonder what the, as Senator mentioned, that there was some variation within a community. I was thinking perhaps in Stafford, I've looked up, they have a pro rata, what I think is a pro rata recovery system. I have no idea whether this is the real situation or not when it comes to the bill. But there are some situations like that where, you know, when someone upfronts the cost of development, in different parts of the system, there are different costs, and those are recovered on a pro rata basis over time. That might be one scenario that accounts for intra-locality variation. So, Mr. Chairman, the Municipal Wastewater Association, we're concerned to understand what the bill would do, and we'll send this back to our rate consultants to.
Thank you. And there was someone else, and if you could please try to hold it for just a couple of minutes, because we've got to be out of here in about 30 minutes, 25, 30 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, Joe Lurch with the Virginia Association of Counties. And
Could you speak?
Yes,
Who you all?
yeah, Joe Lurch with the Virginia Association of Counties. And first, I'd just say, align our comments with Mr. Pomeroy's, just some of the concerns that he outlined. I do think that the patron for, you know, a delayed enactment, realizing that there's going to be some impact should this pass. You know, just to point to the example that Delegate Marshall gave about Prince William, that's actually an authority, so this wouldn't even affect that. So that it's that disparate thing in the 6 sections of code. Thank you.
Yeah, but excuse me, there's, come forward, Preston, speak.
Yeah,
Tell
good morning,
me.
Preston Bryant, on behalf of Virginia Municipal League, or Water Waste Authorities Association. We would align ourselves with Mr. Pomeroy's thoughtful comments. You do have 6 code sections, 2 of those is localities. This amendment is only 1 code section. So in 1 code section on localities, it says fair and reasonable. On another code section for localities, it says practical and equitable. The code section with fair and reasonable, that has a lot of case history behind it. People typically know what that means. Practical and equitable has never been litigated. They don't know what it means. So what's a locality to do? If this were to go before a judge, you appoint judges to try to interpret what you say. They're going to look at 2 code sections, say 2 very different things, wonder what you meant. So I would say that these are set up as enterprise funds, they're water funds. They were set up to cover the operations, maintenance, and debt service typically. They're not there to make money, but to cover the costs. Some localities will use part of their general fund to subsidize their water fund. They'll do so in an attempt, to in many cases, to try to keep tap fees and rates and such low. If they now look at these conflicting code sections, will they continue to do that? Or will they err on the side of these 5 enumerated criteria and say, we're going to stick with that? We're now going to perhaps stop subsidizing the water fund. What impact will that be? Will that then drive tap fees up in order to compensate? If you have 2 different, second and last, if you have 2 different standards of fair and reasonable and practical and equitable, and if they go to practical and equitable, does that mean they no longer have to be fair and reasonable? Maybe. How do you interpret that? If they no longer have to be fair and reasonable, do they then go up? Maybe. Who knows? So this will likely be litigated, perhaps unnecessarily. You may have jurisdictions that now have to do a very expensive rate study, or they otherwise would have to do so, simply to try to figure out what this means. So we're not aware of this being a rampant problem across localities. If it is,
Thank you. We
maybe,
have about 3 or 4 more
perhaps
minutes
the
on
housing
this.
commission should look at it.
Delegate President, he has a question or a comment on?
I just wanted to ask any of the earlier witnesses if this could possibly, and this is kind of following up on our questions earlier, Elliot Stolly as well, could there be a rate increase? And could we see in some localities with this new standard, could there actually be a rate increase?
Well, keep in mind, these are not rates. These are the tap fees. These are the connection fees.
Could it affect the citizens?
I would just say, I'm standing before you because of the frustration of the unknowns and that the lack of a formula or a methodology, which this bill now includes. So you would have some basis for those rates or those connection charges, which today you just don't have. It's kind of what we decided we want to do.
Delegate Hodges?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In looking at the legislation, it says for water and services provided by localities. What about authorities? It would not apply to authorities at all, only the localities.
No, Mr. Chairman, and look, can I just respond, because I got a committee, I got to chair in 5 minutes as well. Let me just respond to the two gentlemen that just spoke about the inconsistency with the other code sections. You know, we hear it all the time. It's not the boogeyman, we're just trying to fix one section of it. They can go back and apply fair and reasonable on those other code sections, or they can get their own bill and fix it all if they want to do that. But I would just tell you, this actually sets into place, as Delegate Marshall articulated so well, a standard to which everyone can get on board with. We've taken all due regard, fair and reasonable, if you want to say that, or what a reasonable, prudent person would do, to try to make allowances for those localities to figure it out. They got till 2018, so I don't think what we're asking them to do by defining the metrics to which they have to do this, shouldn't be that hard. If the engineers that we talk to help us put this language together on how they do outflows and all those other things, I think localities can do too, Mr. Chairman.
Since I have two delegates up here that want to call any question, I'm trying to give everybody a chance, and I'm gonna cut this off in about 2 minutes. There's a lady that wants to speak. I'll let you speak, and then we'll go.
Hi, I'm Jerry Wilson. I represent the city of Newport News, and we actually are a locality, and we provide water to about 140,000 customers on the peninsula. We based our rates on the cost of doing the work, and the rates, anytime there's a change in rate, increase, decrease, otherwise, those rates have to be approved by our city council. They're vetted in a work session. Citizens have an opportunity to come in and talk about them. So we believe, we strongly oppose the bill.
Excuse me 1 second. If you base it on cost, then what's wrong with this bill?
Well, cost of doing something in my locality might be different than the cost of doing something in another locality. And
But what's wrong with the bill if it's based on cost and what's?
It's based on reasonable and equitable as opposed to fair and reasonable. So, I mean, we're basically swapping out words here is what we're doing.
Thank you, ma'am. Yes, sir.
Bob Mathias, City of Union Beach, echo the other comments, but we're also concerned because you are changing some of the definitions. We have issued debt and we will issue debt in the future for sewer and water bond facilities. And we're afraid of changing these definitions might put a cloud on existing and future debt. Thank you.
Everybody has spoken. I will entertain a motion.
Move report.
It's been moved.
Move report as amended.
It's been moved and seconded that we report the bill as amended. Okay, everybody ready to vote? All in favor, vote yes. All opposed, vote no. Everybody voted? Clerk will close the roll. Ayes 15, noes 4, the bill's reported.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, committee.
Okay, now the rest of it should roll pretty quickly. The next on the agenda, it would be Senate Bill 1073, which is, open change. That was before that's you, Charles. Everything's okay with that.
Mr. Chairman, we have a substitute on House Bill 1073.
Yes.
The bill was not heard. Senate Bill 1073. The subcommittee did not hear the bill.
It's been moved and seconded that we adopt the amendment and the nature substitute for Senate Bill 1073. Senate's open change bill, charter for the town of Bridgewater. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Now, let me tell you, what the bill does now with the substitute, we took the elections out, and most of you already know by ordinance, any locality statewide can do this, but we wanted to send that to goods and elections, so we took that out. The Senate is fine with it, and that's where we are. Chairman Charles Poindexter.
Mr. Chairman, the bill is a significant upgrade to the charter of the town of Bridgewater. All the components in it marrying up with standard components in town charters. And I would move we report the bill.
Second. And move to second, we report the bill. zero, the bills reported. Next.
Mr. Chairman, Senate Bill 1083 by Senator Wexler is a simple voluntary boundary line adjustment in Fairfax County. It's been duly recorded, all the paperwork is in order, it's very straightforward. I would move to report the bill.
Been moved and seconded to report this bill, and I looked at this, but Jeff, this is straightforward. Yeah. Okay, everybody ready to vote? Any discussion? Everybody ready to vote? All in favor, vote yes. All opposed, vote no. Everyone, no. Somebody has not voted. Everybody voted? Clerk will close the roll. Ayes 19, no, 0, the bill is reported. That completes your report. Okay. They were two bills that were not heard, but everything, we reviewed them, and Jeff straightened everything out, everything's fine. Next is subcommittee number 2, the chairman of the subcommittee, Doug Stallings.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First up is Senate Bill 926 from Senator Peterson. It allows localities to authorize the chief law enforcement officer in that locality to enforce a uniform schedule of civil penalties for violation of the locality's noise ordinance. The subcommittee recommended reporting 9-0, and I so move.
Been moved and seconded, we report Senate Bill 926, Doug Peterson's bill. Any discussion? Everybody know what we're doing. Everybody ready to vote? All in favor, vote yes. All opposed, vote no. Everyone voted. Clerk will close the roll. Ayes 19, no, 0, the bill's reported.
Mr. Chairman, next bill is Senate Bill 932 from Senator Favola. It exempts from a public hearing requirement prior to disposal of real property by a locality the conveyance of utility easements related to a transportation project. This bill incorporates Senate Bill 1259. It was recommended by the subcommittee to report 10-0, and I so move.
Moved and seconded, we report Senate Bill 932, Senator Favola's bill. Any discussion? Everybody ready to vote? All in favor, vote yes. All opposed, vote no. Everybody voted. Clerk will close the roll. Ayes 19, no, 0, the bill is reported.
Mr. Chairman, Senate Bill 1558 from Senator Peterson allows local officers required to give a bond to provide confirmation from the Division of Risk Management that such officer is included in the blanket surety bond. Current law requires an officer to provide an extract of the master surety bond as proof of coverage. The subcommittee recommends reporting 9-0, and I so move.
Moved and seconded, we report Senate Bill 1558. Any discussion? Everybody ready to vote? All in favor, vote yes. All opposed, vote no. Clerk will close the roll. Ayes 19, no, 0, the bill is reported.
Mr. Chairman, Senate Bill 1559 from Senator Peterson requires that the recipient of certain notices from the Board of Zoning Appeals receive the notice via certified mail at the last known address or usual abode prior to the commencement of the 30-day appeal period. The subcommittee recommended reporting 8-1, and I so move.
Moved and seconded, we report Senate Bill 1559. Any discussion? Any wish to speak in favor of opposition? Everybody ready to vote? All in favor, vote yes. All opposed, vote no. Clerk will close the roll. Ayes 19, no, 0, the bill is reported. I think that completes the docket. Let me just say that I appreciate all of your hard work in the subcommittees, because this committee, that's where the work is done. You can see from that one bill that I didn't think was that controversial. It took 30 minutes to, and that's why I say the subcommittees really do a whale of a job, and I want to thank all of you for being here. And this is one more week to go, but we are finished.